you know what, next year we might come back and people will still remember that we did so many things, apart from training online, but we also made things happen today in this room. So
there's going to be more gifts, so keep tweeting, keep retweeting. There's not just going to be gifts for tweeting and retweeting. So, you know, there's going to be more challenges later on, so please stay with us till the end while we're moving to the most important part of the day, where
yes.
we're almost reaching to the 10 startups that are going to pitch before investors. But right before that, why don't we hear about funding opportunities from DMM.Africa? Welcome on stage, Stephane Fouche from DMM.Africa.
Big round of applause.
Hey everyone. That's a very, very weak response. Hey everyone.
Hi, Stephane.
That's better. Thank you very much. Okay. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to spend too much time. And I know that I'm supposed to be talking about challenges. So this is where, taking on what Andrew was saying from Startup Boat, let me go and talk a bit more about the story of DMM Africa and how our journey in investing into the companies in Rwanda took place. With this story, I hope it acts as a case study to show what are the challenges that middlemen, like Andrew and I, and Alex also, we have to face. So I'm wearing this tag over here. It says investor. But in the end, it's really a middleman. Because the person who is truly the investor is the person who made the money that I'm taking from that person and trying to see where to put it. So understanding that investor is the most important thing, which is something that I feel people always tend to ignore. So you have your large Y Combinators and so on, but where is that money coming from? So that's one thing that I would say to keep in mind. In terms of the challenges, there are 4 main challenges that I would say were the biggest issues that we faced. So information, and then you had language, the third one was location, and the last one was culture. So I want to focus a bit more on culture itself. So coming from Japan, trying to invest in an African country, for us at DMM Africa, it was also trying to explain to our chairman that, number one, Africa has 54 different countries. Seems very simple, but then the question that I get asked at work the most often is, what language do they speak in Africa? I was like, great question. There are 54 countries and they speak multiple, so it is not one language. So this is where culture by itself was the biggest leap that we had to do. Now with culture comes also language. What was the biggest issue that we faced with language is, I get all this information in English, but that information is sourced to me, to Alex or other partners, in Swahili. So you go from Swahili passed on to me into English. The English I learn is a different English than other people. When you say English, you have the one in England and so on, and that information has to be passed to our chairman in Japanese. So how many steps in between? How much time does it take to go from one step to the other? So what I learned in this process is to be very patient. Do you think startups can be very patient? Startups don't have that ability to be patient because you have a time limit, which is how much funding you have on you, and when that funding goes away, then that startup goes bust. So this is where us middlemen, we see this every single day. You see this opportunity, but you don't have the time to bring it to the proper person, nor the actual language that that person wants to hear. And this is when this beautiful idea goes bust. That's one of the biggest challenges right there. Now the funding has been released. The funding is now brought to the startup itself. What is something very common that companies do? You send someone from headquarters to oversee the organization that you just invested in. So I don't think that's a great practice, but that's something that people tend to go for, because you need a watchdog, someone to oversee what's happening, someone to be there underground to babysit the startup. In this situation, what ends up happening is the local expert who is the startup leader is now fighting with the person who's the middleman who owns the purse, because the person who is dishing out the funds themselves, all they see is money being released, but they don't see any results yet. So combining all these issues, what does it lead to? It leads to the issue of information. Is the information making it properly to the person that needs it? Is the information making it on time? So we're back to this whole idea of time. That's the biggest issue as a middleman in this situation. Not the investor, as a middleman trying to bring funds from one country to another, especially when working on the African continent. So what are the things that we've learned? So to be patient is one, but trust is a different one. So to have a local partner. So the local partner for DMM Africa here is, you probably already guessed it, Sahara Sparks. So I trusted Jumane. Alex Kapungu trusted Jumane, but the chairman of the company where I work for, you guys don't even know his name. I didn't mention his name. You guys always heard chairman. His name is Keishi Kameyama. He doesn't see what's going on here. So he will trust the middleman, which is Alex and I when we were from DMM Africa, but he doesn't see the startups themselves. We tried to bring him, we tried the many things that we can do, but he doesn't see the results directly, in the sense that he doesn't see the impact. So we have to show him something that is very simple to understand for every single individual, which is a PL sheet. How much money can you make? But for most startups, it takes time. So we're back to the issue of time again. You need the funds so you can operate, to launch your business, to incubate, you accelerate it, to sell your product so you can create the revenue that you need to impress your investors. Every single step I take will take a bit of time, but you don't have that time because you have to pay your staff. If you have a family, you're facing issues. But the investors don't see that problem. So you're stuck in a loop where you have the funds there, but the information and the time needed to actually bring these funds is not taking place. The final thing that I would say we learn is really to be humble from the DMM Africa side. In the end, we're not the experts in this environment. We're visiting. And the reason why I'm bringing that last part is, if you look over here, you will see ABIC, which was the business competition that we built last year. ABIC stands for Africa Business Idea Cup. Was the competition a success? I would say yes. We've seen local players. If any of you know Elia Pad, Jennifer Shigoli, she's a graduate of the ABIC program. But when building the competition itself, we made a mistake of choosing the wrong partner from the beginning. We didn't choose a local partner, we chose a Japanese partner who doesn't understand the environment. But because it's a Japanese partner, we just trusted that Japanese partner. Why? Because, hey, the person is Japanese. Yes, that person is Japanese, so let's just go and trust that person. So this is where the middleman comes into the picture and tries to say, no, we can trust the local partner. But then when moving towards the local partner, we will receive a barrage of questions. Why can we trust them? So are they not going to take the money and move away from them? What proof do you have that they can do their job? How can they do it? Really, but it's so far away. We can't understand these people. We can't communicate with them. Oh, well, can you send a statement of what they're doing? So answering all these questions take time. And when building a business competition with 2 weeks remaining, Jumani did it in 12 days. The more time us middlemen spent talking to a supervisor who's a chairman to get this money released, the less time he had to get ready for launching the business competition. In the end, he did it. He succeeded. Now he's a trusted partner. He is someone that we work with. And communication is now easier. And releasing funds that in Luanda or in Tanzania for us, especially for investment purposes, has become a lot easier than before, because we created this model before. But the main issue again, time. You don't have time, you go bust. There's no trust, so you spend more time with your partner to build that trust. So once you finally build that trust, you have that time, then you're finally trying to release the funding as a middleman to the organizations that you see value in. But the biggest thing that I learned also being in that middleman position is that I have to represent the opinion of the person who is releasing the funds. I might have my own opinions, but my opinions in this situation don't really matter. It's the person releasing the funds that I have to persuade. So as you're persuading me, I have someone else that I have to persuade. So this is probably the biggest challenge that I see from my eyes when investing in the African continent from the perspective of working for a foreign company. There's not a communication taking place. There's a lack of language, trust, and the biggest issue is time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stephane Fouche. Now we're about, have a seat, please. We're about to start discussing the panelists. The panel discussion is about to start. And I'd like to call upon several people. Maurice Otero. Maurice Otero from Meta, Nairobi. Ali Deuji from Eureka. And Matteo Rizzi from FinTechstage. Please. Makofi kidogo basi akiwa nakuja. Round of applause. Lillian McCoy from Jamii Insurance. I saw her heading outside. I think she's coming in. And we also have Pierre Alain. I don't know if he's here today. From Seedstars World.
And Amea.
You're here? Thank you. Amea. Yes. Can we please have you on stage as well, Amea? Now, they're going to be talking about the challenges and opportunities of startups.
Okay, so as a middleman, this is where being a host is actually a lot easier than wanting to be an investor. But I would say the best thing is if you go around very quickly to each individual, they can quickly say who they are and what they do. So this way the crowd has a better idea of who are the people who are the panelists here.
Cool. I'll go first. I am Maurice Otero from Kenya. I run a company called Meta. Meta is, simply put, it's a club for entrepreneurs where for entrepreneurs and anybody who supports entrepreneurship, be it an investor, corporate, or a business. We started off in Hong Kong. We've expanded to Nairobi, where we have a virtual platform of about 1,500 members. Generally in Africa, we have about 400 members, and what we push for is the collaborations that you see guys are talking about. How do you, as a startup, get connected to a business? How do you get connected to a investor? How does an investor get connected to a corporate? And that's what we facilitate and run in Nairobi. We are looking for potential partners in Tanzania, and hopefully I'll find one. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chris. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Eureka. We're an equity crowdfunding platform, which is a pretty new concept over here, but mark my words, you'll be hearing more and more of this over the next few years. Basically, we help businesses raise money. So we give all the support to an entrepreneur to get them fit for funding, pitch decks, financials, valuations, term sheets, etc. We then help you with the fundraise itself. So we effectively list you on our platform and give you access to our investors. We have about 15,000 registered investors, and also empower you locally to reach out to your crowd, your followers, your fans, your customers, your subscribers. You know, we act as your megaphone, basically. I'm based in Dubai. We operate in the MENA region, Southeast Asia, and Europe, and are now looking to expand to East Africa. So I've been here for the last couple of days listening to the challenges that entrepreneurs have, which frankly are the same everywhere, which is often access to capital and and we as entrepreneurs are very good at our product, but we're pretty bad at raising money. And so our job as a platform is to help you with that and hold your hand through the process.
My name is Lillian McCoy, and founder of a company called Edgepoint Digital, which runs a product called Jamii Insurance. It's basically a mobile micro-health insurance product targeting the low-income population, which we launched in partnership with Jubilee Insurance and Vodacom Tanzania. So it's one thing that we've also managed to score the likes of what Edwin and Smart Codes are doing, getting a partnership with the corporates. And we are just now expanding to Kenya and DRC, again supported by the telco, which is Vodacom in this case. And we have managed to raise funds from the likes of Seedstars and Techstars and donors, including Gates Foundation, USAID, and soon, yeah, I'm not allowed to say that yet. But yeah, we've managed to raise funds growing from a very small startup based in Tanzania to a story that is likely going to be a success story soon. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're Seedstars, an investment company that is active in 70 markets around the world, including Africa, Asia, LATAM, etc. And we invest in the best talents that we can find in these markets, like Lilian, for example. So that's what we do.
Hi guys, my name is Matteo Rizzi. I'm the co-founder of FinTechstage, which is obviously about fintech. For the past 15 years, what we do is we help fintech ecosystems to get built by putting together 5 communities: startups, investors, banks, technology partners, and venture capitalists.
Hi guys, I'm Amay from Omidyar Network. We're an impact investment fund, which is a venture capital fund with an impact mandate. We invest in early stage innovative companies. We've invested $1 billion in the last 10 years, about $100 million in Africa. I focus on financial services, and one company that we've invested in financial services is in Tanzania. It's Off-Grid Electric, based in Arusha.
Okay, so a common thing that I can hear is you have ecosystems, you have platforms, and you also have venture funds. So how do you go yourself to find these investors to put on your platform? How do you look for investors willing to support these ecosystems? Or how do you raise your funds? Because it seems that raising funds is an issue. So how do you go yourself to raise funds to actually propel all of the activities that you're doing?
Yeah, we try to make a lot of noise and evangelize a bit. Our investors are coming mainly from Europe, not only, but mainly. So our challenge and what we've been working over the past 4 years is to try to showcase the best entrepreneurs to these investors. That's why we organize these big events. We have 70 events per year and one large event in Switzerland where we gather all investors. And that's one way for us to, but it takes a lot of time. Like I said, it's 4 years we've been doing that, and it's getting bigger and bigger, and the interest is increasing. But we can feel at least that the investors are still afraid to invest in these markets, because honestly what they hear, when they hear about Nigeria, they hear Boko Haram. When they hear about Mexico, it's drug, etc. So that's what they hear really. So what we're trying to show basically that yes, that exists, but it's maybe 1% or less than what's happening in the country. The rest is great things and you have these great entrepreneurs building stuff, and there are great opportunities as well. So that's what we're trying to do, and we do that by making as much noise as we can to investors in Europe.
Okay. So moving on, I have a question specifically for FinTechstage. So Matteo, with all these events taking place, this is where that buzz, as you mentioned, was created. So people are becoming more interested and investors are moving forward. So what do you think are these events? How do they affect the FinTech ecosystem itself?
So indeed, there are events all over the places, right? Maybe, how do you say it, making a transition from the how to attract investors question, which is related to this type of events, right? You need to create catalysts. And investor will come if you make life easy for them. And as an example, yesterday we had this FinTech breakfast here, as a part of the Sahara Sparks event. And the banks were nowhere in the event. plenty of startups, entrepreneurs, tech partners, right? So if banks are not around, it was like a brilliant interaction amongst people who are thriving to change the ecosystems, but the incumbent has to be there. Now, luckily, with Hassan, with George, which we are now building slowly a place where every actor is represented, and events is a part. The events are part of these gatherings, but they have to be a mean to an end, if you see what I mean.
Okay, so you have events, you have the ecosystem, you bring every partner there. The funding is there, but you're saying the partners in this situation, the banks, were not there. So that means partners are the one who are missing, or is it really investment who's missing? So what do you guys think?
Maybe I'll just give a comment on both ends, on a startup side and also on a corporate side. On our startup side, I would like to just say it's really important sometimes to choose which events you're going to, if they're going to add value to you. I mean, there are, as you said, there are 1,000,001 events that are out there. Just choose carefully which ones you're going to and be very intentional as a founder, because you have, as you said in the earlier conversation, you have limited time to be going to these events. You need to also to be building your product at the same time. So choose it carefully. Then go there with an intention. I'm going to meet a media. I'm going to meet Eureka. I'm going to meet these people. On a corporate end, I mean, if you don't really open up your mind to start to work with startups again, especially local corporates, unfortunately, I'll be hitting you today because most of them are still bound in terms of the traditional way of doing it. We'll scale our business doing only traditional marketing, and there's digital marketing. For example, if you look at what Jamie is doing right now, if it would have gone ahead to do it without the cooperation of Jubilee, it would have completely eaten up the market for Jubilee. But Jubilee was brilliant enough to know, like, hey, if she goes alone, she's going to eat up our market. Let's partner up and do it. So corporates should also look at startups innovation as a means to growing their business, not as competition. You need to do more of collaboration amongst your corporates and the startups. I think that's the way I would say in terms of why the events are also important for corporates to come and listen and see what's going on. Yep.
So collaboration is needed among these partners, and there needs to be a selection to the events that some of people are going, because as we can see, there are many events. So from a venture capitalist fund, how do you select the events that you go to?
I go to very few. But there's an entire industry now of, I work in FinTech, so Matteo will support me, that there's an entire industry of these events. And one of my biggest cribs in some of these events is that we talk so much about startups and so much about entrepreneurship and ecosystems, but there is very little talk about the themes which these startups are supposed to be attacking. For example, if you talk about FinTech, we just keep talking about FinTech, and after a while it doesn't make sense, because what within FinTech are investors willing to invest in, are partners willing to be attracted by? Is that SME credit? Is that digital payments? More of the conversation needs to be focused on what entrepreneurs should do at this point, because you start a business 3 years earlier than the time is and it will fail. So I think one of the mandates of events like this and others should be to bring out from experts and people from different stakeholders, telcos, investors, et cetera, what are the themes they are looking for, so that some bright people in the audience can take those and attack them.
Thank you very much. So very few events per year. So if someone, for example, wanted to get in contact with you, so events seem to be a perfect location to do so. So
can I add on to that? I wouldn't say when you're really, really early stage, events should be your focus. And you don't get to meet investors through events because they don't even give you the opportunity to pitch unless you are selected to pitch. And for you to be selected to pitch, you must have gone through a different process altogether. So it's more of, getting into accelerators should be your main focus. And through that, they get to showcase you in events where the likes of these guys are there. And at that time, whatever you're saying makes sense to them because you've been trained to know what to say. So yeah, don't just show up because you have great ideas and be there, get into accelerators. For us, Techstars was the first accelerator we went to, and it really played a major role to getting us to even Seedstars wanting to be part of us. So yeah, getting into accelerators should be your key focus, and then when you know your value, your product, and what you really want, that's when you get into events like this to get to meet the likes of the VCs and angel investors.
Thank you.
And can I add to that? So, I mean, yeah, events are obviously good fun, right? You come to these, you learn stuff, and you get to meet like-minded individuals, but you as an entrepreneur need to stand out, and there's a lot of noise at events like this. It's very difficult for you to meet with investors or otherwise and make yourself be heard. It's a very noisy place, frankly. I mean, that's where equity crowdfunding platforms come in, because we basically create a entire marketing buzz about what you do, how you do it, why you do it, and we match you with investors that are interested through the profiling that we do on the platform to your specific theme, the problem you're solving, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm obviously biased because we're a platform that mainly links you with angel investors, but we as entrepreneurs think that the prize is VC investment or corporate investment, but the reality is very few of you are going to get investment from VCs, and that's not because you're a bad business or you're doing the wrong thing. It's merely because the mandates for VCs are so tight and so tiny in terms of what they can invest in at the right stage of the business cycle that you can waste a lot of time trying to achieve that aim of getting VC investment and just failing, not because your business is bad, just because you're not at the right time. So where you can focus on angel investors, focus on individuals that can have an emotional connection with what you do, and frankly can sign a smaller check, but many smaller checks that enable you to build up your business. One last point to make, and this is contradicting everything I've just said, is if you can get away with it, don't raise any money, right? Again, the prize is, we think as entrepreneurs, we've got to raise loads of money, and then we can scale up, et cetera, et cetera. But the moment you start raising money, you're addicted to it, right? And the music gets louder and louder and louder, and you're on this train, and you have to then, you spend that money on headcount and HR, and then that money runs out, and you've got to raise more money and more money and more money. It's dangerous, right? It's a dangerous game to get on, and the longer you can get away with not raising money, the better product you're going to build, the more valuable you are to investors because you have traction and stability and revenue growth. So, yeah, don't be too quick to raise cash. See if you can do it without any money.
To follow up to that, so when would you say is a good timing to start raising money then? Because if you start raising money, then that means you have to go on that buzz. You have to create this buzz to attract attention. But then if you focus on attracting this attention, this is where you're focusing away from your product. It seems like it's the dilemma every startup is always facing. You have to wear multiple hats, multiple things at the same time. So how do you focus, create buzz, fundraise, and at the same time staying focused?
I can answer that, but you go ahead. I mean, there isn't a right or wrong answer, right? Every business is different. But like I say, as a case in point, I, as CEO of Eureka, spend most of my life fundraising. That's what I do. And I'm now planning for our next round in 2018, and then looking for an exit in 2020. And I'm stuck doing this. I don't build the business. I'm fundraising. And so where I'm lucky, I have a team that can build the business and run it on the ground. But for you as individuals, if you're a one-man or two-man show, my advice is start raising money only at the point where you're building, there is a traction, whatever that traction is, through you hitting your KPIs or you building up a subscriber base, you start to monetize a product that you can then leverage on when you're speaking to investors. Investors are investing in growth. Investors are investing in a dream. They're investing in the hope rather than the reality, okay? So be raising money at the point where that hope is very attractive because it's frankly a lot more interesting than the reality of the game. So raise money at the point where you are going through a growth cycle.
So for me, I have two comments. The first one is if you raise money, try to raise money from smart investors. So what we call smart money. The idea of smart money is basically, money for me at the early stage doesn't make the difference really. What makes the difference is the execution and the access to market, for example. That's where corporates could play a big role. So if you have an investor that is running a large corporate or that has the right connections, that will make a much bigger difference than just a check like that. So that's my first comment. The second on the timing. In the beginning, like I said, you don't need a lot of money. So you have to pay the bills, etc., to survive. But you need to prove your assumptions. And once these assumptions have been proven, you can easily raise money because you go to an investor and you will be able to answer most of the questions about these assumptions. Okay, but is there a market? Is there a product market fit? How much was the cost of acquisition? How much is the lifetime value? All that kind of questions that an investor will ask. Once you have all these answers, that's the right time for me because you know you're going to ask exactly the right amount for, and you know that if he invests, I don't know, 100, you're going to give him back 150 or something like that. So you know exactly, and that will be money for growth, and that's basically later seed, early, or Series A. And that's when you really need to raise money. In the beginning, it's just to survive and try to get smart investor in the beginning. And yeah, and spreadsheet is usually the best way to also raise money. Like you can say whatever bullshit kind of you want, but at the end of the day, just show me the numbers, show me that it runs, that you make profit, that it's that you can acquire a customer for lower amounts than it will bring you back. So that's the kind of strategy I would do to talk to investors.
Stephane, maybe just to add on to something, and for me, I'll be speaking to the entrepreneurs who I have an idea type of entrepreneur. I mean, I have an idea, I've built it or something, I want to launch it. For those type of people, if you start thinking of VCs and it diverts your attention to focusing on that. I would rather, first of all, raise money from the FFF, like family, friends, and fools, yeah, who can fund your business at that time. Because if you start, I'm thinking of, before I even come to Seedstars, before I even come to Eureka, my idea needs to have traction. And the other thing to change that perspective from startups is that if I have an idea, don't demand for investment. Don't think it's a guarantee for you to get investment. Investors are also, it's like dating. If you're dating an investor, if you're not beautiful, they'll not listen to you, right? And investors also want good startups, right? So if the startup is not beautiful, that's it. And by beauty, I mean, are you bringing in any returns? Do you have potential for returns in the long run? So for you to have that, then you have to have your basis or your base cleared out in terms of raising money from your friends. And it changes perspective from your mother or your family is telling you like, oh, the first investment you should have is go buy land. That's typically, I see that a lot in Kenya. And your parents will tell you, go buy land. But if you take that money that you're supposed to buy land with and invest in your startup, and then you make yourself beautiful for the investor who gives you more money, then you grow and then you see something like that. I think that's my advice, or something that I will comment on.
Can I just challenge that?
Please.
I keep hearing that you should be raising from friends, family. I'm not sure if I have the right set of friends or family, but I tried raising from them and it didn't make sense to them. And even for the few that, I think I had one or two who put in money, a year later they want their money back. And they don't understand, like, investing is, you might get it back or not, and not necessarily getting it back, but the business might grow or die. But whether it dies or not, they want their money back. And then the other risk is that they become dormant investors. They put in their money, small amount of money. I think one of them gave me about 4 million. But all the struggle from the 4 million I got at that time to, how much I've spent now, they don't want to be part of that. And they still want to have shares with the 4 million they put in. So yeah, I think I'm confused on how, are there terms to engage with friends, family, and fools? Or your best bet will be angel investors who already understand, the investment?
I agree with Lillian, actually. I've met a lot of startups who just don't have access, who come from poor families, right? And that's where we need an active angel investor network in this country. And I think we've said this 10 times, this group. And that, it's a catch-22, because until you have investable startups, the angel investors don't get excited and the ecosystem doesn't get built. And unless that ecosystem gets built, there are no startups. And I think you need to break that vicious cycle on the side of the startups. And folks like Seedstars and Booney and this event itself is a forum for angel investors to get excited. But let me take this opportunity to encourage people who have money in this hall to think about alternative investments and read some books on startup investments, because it is a really good payoff if you're investing intelligently. It's not just you know, as a moral high grounding or high standing of investing in entrepreneurship. It's a way to make money also, right? So please think about it as an alternative commercial asset class, which is investing in startups. So that's my exhortation to everyone in this room.
Alternative commercial asset class. So this is something that I think is going to take a bit of time for different people in the crowd to pretty much digest. But I'm being waved in the back, telling me that we're going over time. So if we have any last comment from any one of the panelists, then we can close the session.
I'll say one more thing. So dating, I love that analogy and I often give it. And the other rule, and I think Series A investor, we're getting married when we're investing. So it requires a lot of dating. So if you're at a stage where you're going to raise a Series A of $1 million, $3 million, $5 million, engage 8 months in advance till you want the money in the bank, because the investment process itself takes 4 to 5 months. And overestimate customer acquisition costs. Those are the two.
And can I just say, following on from this dating analogy, I totally agree. But a lot of my friends, when I was growing up, the ugliest friends got all the action, right? Because dating, as with raising money, is a game. It's about pushing the right buttons at the right time. It's about creating an artificial sense of a competitive environment, a fear of missing out. The fact is, the train's left the station, right? Do not be needy. You need to position yourself very strongly and figure out, as earlier panelists said, what that investor wants and why they're interested in your specific theme. Okay, so yeah, the best businesses don't always get funded, because just like the ugliest guys often get all the action.
Well, if we keep talking about the dating analogy, you know what? Let's call the banks and help us to build the Tinder for fintech.
For startups, I'd like to, ask angel investors around. I know there are not many out there, especially local angel investors. If we could find a way, which they are already finding ways to do so, to make more, we have successful people, the Mengies and the likes, to get them excited to want to be part of, investing in the startup world. Because every one of you, I was at the dinner at the embassy last night, and every time someone says what they do, you conclude like there's so much help out there, but no one is going to come to you when you're really, idea stage. So who is going to finance us from idea to being attractive enough to all of you? I keep trying to make a mayor invest in us, and he's like, no, you're too, I'll come in maybe probably at 1 million when you're raising 1 million. But who is going to, take me through raising 200K to that stage of 1 million? So we really need a lot of, focus in creating more angel investors in Tanzania so that they help startups really grow to something attractive enough for the guys.
Thank you very much, and then I think this closes the session.